Hello everyone, and thank you for joining June's TRP webinar. My name is Tamara Bailey. I'm just going to be introducing our guest presenter today. Today's session is what does the use of fitness tracking apps tell you about your members? I'm going to hand you over in a moment to James, who is our presenter. Before I do that, I just want to take you through a couple of housekeeping points. I know some of you have joined us for webinars previously, but some of you are new. So you will see on the far right of your screen a control panel. I just want to check that everything's working from an audio and visual perspective. So if you can see the screen and you can hear me okay, you'll find that there's a small yellow hand. If you could just click that and just let me know that everything is working, and I'll pick up with anybody who's having any problems. Seems to be most people. If you haven't done it yet and you can hear me, if you could just click that yellow hand on the side of the control panel, then I'll know everything's working okay. Fantastic. Look like everyone's with us. So welcome to this afternoon's webinar, or this morning's webinar if you're joining us from North America. I'll hand you over in a moment to our guest speaker, and we'll be taking you through today's session on fitness tracking apps. So today's presenter is James Charles. He is our marketing executive and has been with the Retention People for the last 12 months. James is our mastermind behind our webinar series, our blogs, and hugely involved in our TRP 10,000 study, which most of you are very familiar with. So it's a great opportunity today for us to have James, who is actually delivering one of the sessions on our latest research. So I'll hand you over to James now. Throughout the webinar, we would like to keep the flow of the webinar running, but we would really love to hear your feedback and your questions. So you will find in your control panel there is a questions box. If you could type any questions you have along the way, I'll be fielding them up. If there is anything I think is relevant to bring to James's attention throughout the webinar, I will do that. Otherwise, we will potentially keep most of the questions towards the end, and we would love to hear your feedback and any discussion points you have then. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to James.
Brilliant, thanks Tamara. Hi everybody, as Tamara mentioned, my name's James. I'm Marketing Executive here at the Retention People, and I'll be guiding you through the topic today, the latest TRP 10,000 research into app use and retention. So as I've said, this is part of the TRP 10,000 study that we've been conducting since July 2013 with the help of Dr. Melvyn Hillsdon. The aim of today's session is to get you to think about what a member who's using fitness tracking device, whether that's a Fitbit, a smartwatch, or a mobile phone app, is telling you about their reasons for being a member of your club. Hopefully then this will enable you to support them in achieving their goals and realizing their motivations. So the TRP 10,000 study, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is the biggest and most comprehensive survey of member behavior ever carried out in the health and fitness industry. Its name comes from the fact that 10,000 health and fitness members completed a baseline survey of their exercise habits and membership behaviour back in 2013, as I mentioned. So that's a really significant amount of members. Any of you who are familiar with advertising campaigns from large companies around specifically the UK, but probably the world as well, will know that a sample size of 10,000 consumers is absolutely huge. So during regular intervals over the past 3 years, we've pulled together the research, pulled reports together with the help of Dr. Melvyn Hillsdon, as I've already mentioned, to measure the changes in the habits of the members in the study. So our research into fitness tracking app device use asked members whether they were using any product, app or system to track their physical activity either inside or outside the club. So as part of our research into this topic, we've already produced one report. This is the second, this is the follow-up report, which looks more deeply at what exactly app use means, what it tells us about our members, about your members actually. So let's just remind ourselves of why fitness tracking apps and devices are important to us. So as you'll see on your screen now, just over a quarter of the members who took part in the TRP 10,000 study reported using a fitness tracking app or device. So this is a significant amount, clearly, but it's important not to get carried away. So if we take a look at previous research from the same study, we can really put this into perspective. So at the lower end, we have personal training. So when we asked our TRP 10,000 members whether they'd purchased at least one personal training session in the 3 months prior to that question taking place, we found that only 10% of members had done so. If we look at group exercise, on the other hand, another area that we've done a lot of research into in the past 3 years and even further back, we see that 43.3% of TRP 10,000 members had taken part in group exercise. So you'll see that this quite snugly sits in between the two, pretty much in the middle. So whilst it's not insignificant, it's not something at the moment which we're saying you need to completely revamp your club, change what you're doing in order to align yourselves with technology, with ideas like the Internet of Things. So now that we have this kind of baseline understanding, let's take a look at the more detailed findings from our latest report. So who uses fitness tracking apps? So using an app for monitoring exercise is most common among members aged under 25 years, with 40% reporting they do so. Tracking gradually reduces with age, so that members aged 45 years and older are actually 80% less likely to use a fitness tracking app or device than this group of under 25s. Males are 20% more likely than females to use an app, and using an app is most common among members who are in months 6 to 12 of their membership. App use is least common among new members, so that's members that have been with you for less than 6 months, and also the most long-standing members, so those members that have been with you for 3 years or longer. The number of clubs that a member has belonged to prior to their current club is positively associated with app use. So just under a fifth of members who are new to using a gym report using an app, compared to 35% of members who have belonged to at least 3 previous clubs. Visit frequency, on the other hand, is unrelated to app use, and this is after taking account of differences in age. It's worth noting here, as I mentioned, this taking account of differences in age, that due to the strength of the effect of age and also length of membership on app use, all of the other estimates of app use in this report will be adjusted for these 2 factors. So those of you that access this report when it's released, that will be the case, and also throughout this presentation. That just allows us to concentrate more on the actual effect of app use rather than other characteristics that app users hold. So, what areas do app using members report making progress in? Previous reports from our TRP 10,000 study have shown us that it's always important for members to be making, or at least feel like they're making, progress in the gym. In fact, for each factor that a member reports making progress on, their risk of cancellation in the next 7 months reduces by 10%. So in this study, we found that app use was positively associated with a member's reports of progress over the 3 months prior to taking part in the survey. So overall, app use was more likely to result in a member reporting progress. If we drill down, in particular, app users were more likely to report losing weight, feeling fitter, improving the way they looked, improved muscle tone, having more energy, and feeling happier and healthier compared to non-app users. No association was observed between app use and reported progress with making new friends and enjoying exercise. And this point is absolutely key. So I just want to repeat it, and I want it to stay in your minds at least until we get to the end of the next slide, if not longer. So there's no association observed between app use and reported progress with making new friends and enjoying exercise. So let's take a look at what motivates app using members. So we've seen what they're achieving, what the reality is. Let's look at what their expectations are of their relationship with your club. So what motivates app users in comparison to what they're actually making progress on, and what's the reality compared to their expectations of what they want to achieve, is something that's really important for us to understand. So app users are less likely to be motivated by fitness and health and well-being than non-app users. Motives such as changing shape and appearance, getting stronger and losing weight were equally reported between app users and non-app users. Now, compared to non-app users, app using members are actually more likely to say the reasons they are motivated to exercise because they like and enjoy the gym, like to be with others who enjoy the gym, and want to meet new people. So if we go back to that last point I made on the progress slide, we'll see that there's a huge difference between the expectations and reality of these members. So their motivations extend past what they're reporting progress on. There's a gap between expectation and what gets delivered. So here is the key finding of this report for me, this research, is this gap between expectation and reality, the gap between motivations and progress. And this is a gap that you and your teams have a role in bridging, at bringing this expectation and reality closer together for the member. So we'll talk about more practically how you might go about doing this in the takeaways section of today's session. We like to offer in all of our sessions some practical takeaways for you to go away and discuss with your team and to hopefully implement and see results. So one of the reasons many of you will be here is this bottom line, is what is the impact of app use on retention? So latest findings show that app users cancel their membership at a rate of 22 members per 1,000 per month, compared to 18 members per 1,000 per month in non-app users. So here's an excess of 4 cancellations every month for every 1,000 members at the start of the month. But because app use is associated with a range of factors related to the risk of cancelling, it's important to also take these into account. So after we took account of age, gender, length of membership and visit frequency, app users were only approximately 10% more likely to cancel their membership each month compared to non-app users. So overall, it was concluded with the help of Dr. Melvyn Hillsdon that app use is not strongly related to member retention. And as I've already mentioned, those of you that may have come to this session with looking for that kind of very black and white takeaway, that's not the takeaway that I want you to take with you from today's session. What I want you to take with you is that the relationship between app use and motivations and progress. So particularly this gap between expectation and reality when it comes to enjoying exercise. During this particular research, Dr. Melvyn Hillsdon took a specific interest in age and gender. So we've seen that these are 2 factors that contribute excuse me, to retention to cancellation. So what he did is he split the cohort by age, so under 25s, actually 25 years old and under, and over 25s, and then also by gender. So we've got these 4 groups that you should be able to see now on your screen in the grid. So looking at these groups, I just wonder which groups you think would see the biggest difference in likeliness of cancellation between app users and non-app users. So here we're not saying the difference between the age groups. We're looking within the age group and we're going, is a female app user aged over 25 more or less likely to cancel than a female non-app user aged over 25? would it be the group of younger males that we would jump to the conclusion would have the biggest difference? Would it maybe be the younger females? Well, for both of these groups, there was actually no relationship between app use and increased risk of cancellation. Same can also be said for our older females, so those aged over 25. It is in fact our group of older males aged over 25 where we see a 23% increase in the risk of cancellation for app users compared to non-app users. So if we go back to that 10% statistic that we looked at as an overall group of app users, we can see that this group of male app users aged over 25 are clearly singling themselves out, identifying themselves as a group of high-risk members, a group of members that you and your team should be paying attention to. So, here are our top tips for engaging and strengthening relationships with app-using members in your club. So number one is to help them achieve their goals. So members who use fitness tracking apps are clearly signalling to you that they're interested in their progress. As already mentioned, previous TRP 10,000 research shows that for each factor that a member reports he or she has made progress on, the risk of cancelling during the 7 months after answering the question reduces by 10%, sorry. So think about how you could take your members on a structured, achievable journey. And this, of course, doesn't just apply to your app-using members. It also applies to all your members. That progress statistic that I just shared with you, that 10%, that is not exclusive to app users. So do you already have something in place which takes new members through the milestones on their journey towards their goals? One key thing to note here is that you want to avoid building up expectations, particularly those of app users, even more, only for them to not reach an unachievable goal, which is why the emphasis here is put on having structured and proven processes in place. Excuse me, things that you know can be achieved. So whatever you do, however you approach this, you need to ensure what you're doing is effective, and you're also tracking and reviewing it over time. So our second takeaway is to invite your app-using members to group exercise sessions. So latest research shows that 2 of the key motivations for app use are being with others who enjoy the gym and wanting to meet new people. So both clearly aspects provided by involvement in group exercise. You and your teams need to guide these members towards group exercise by understanding why they aren't involved at present. So for me, there's 2 clear reasons why someone might not be involved in group exercise. Is that because they're not aware of group exercise in your club? They're not aware it's part of their membership? They're not aware of how or where to get started with that? Or is it a more deeper issue? Is it that they're anxious to join an established group? They don't know what they're doing. They don't feel like they know what they're doing. Now, there'll be 2 different approaches to these different obstacles, but both things that you need to consider within your particular club, and whether you can put things in place which help people overcome both of these. So in this particular topic of group exercise, if we think about the group that we identified earlier, the male app users aged over 25, do you have a group exercise offering that's designed to appeal to them? So the male market may be something that's underserved in group exercise, and maybe particularly the older male group market. Do you, in your club, have something that fulfills the needs, the motivations of these members? So on top of this, previous TRP 10,000 research shows that group exercise overall for all members can reduce their risk of cancellation by 26%, and that members who make friends at their club are 40% less likely to cancel their membership. Third and final takeaway for today is just to make exercise fun. important to remember, I think, that your members, many of them, the majority of them, in fact, won't be elite athletes. They're spending their leisure time with you. The alternatives are other activities outside of maybe sport and leisure, which sport and fitness, sorry, which they can use to have an enjoyable time, and that's key. So previous research from TRP 10,000 shows that members who are highly motivated by getting enjoyment out of exercise but don't are more than twice as likely to cancel their membership as members who are highly motivated by getting enjoyment out of exercise and do. So here again is this reiterating the importance of making sure whatever you're promising to your members, whatever goals you're helping them to work towards, those goals are achievable, because in many cases, if those goals are unachievable, failing to meet them is worse than actually having no goal to work towards at all. So there are definitely multiple ways you can approach this takeaway of creating enjoyment. But whatever you do to do that, whatever you and your teams work out to do, ensuring that you can measure whether or not what you're doing is making an impact is key. If you can get some feedback from your members early on, and then direct your teams based on this, then you're much more likely to be effective. Okay, so that's all our latest findings. That's all I have to share with you today. What we'd like to do now is just to open up the floor to any questions you may have had about what we've discussed today. So while we wait for those questions to come in, I'll just show you my contact details, and if you'd like to reach out to discuss building stronger relationships with your members or anything else we've discussed in today's session, then I'm more than happy to speak to you on the phone or via email. Okay, Tam, have we had any questions come in yet?
Just had one come in initially. I'll give everybody a few minutes to send theirs through. There's obviously some really interesting stuff in there. Was there anything in different types of apps that showed there was a difference in any impact on either progress or attention, or was it fairly across the board? Yeah, so one of the questions that we asked in the initial research back in 2013 was those members who said that they used something to track their physical activity. We asked them what that was, so we do have the information on what apps we used. So I think it was a very broad range of systems that were used for tracking. So there wasn't any clear correlation for particular apps apart from MyFitnessPal. So that was the one that seemed to be used by the largest group. So obviously with that comes the tendency to report progress on maybe weight loss, fitness, appearance, things like that. Great, thanks. I haven't had any more questions come in. It would be great to hear some sort of feedback and thoughts from anyone. But just a couple of things for me, James. It's obviously what I think stands out that's quite interesting is that people who have apps seem to want more social connection. They want more enjoyment, more fun, but potentially apps could send them the other way and make them a little more isolated. It tends to be doesn't necessarily lend itself to group activity. So is it something that maybe the clubs are missing to try and create a little bit more of a community, embracing apps? Obviously technology is where we're potentially going to be going. Is it something that always work against us, or something that we can sort of embrace and engage with a little bit more rather than it being an alternative? Yeah, I think that was one of the most interesting things for me when I first read this report, was that maybe you would look at someone who's using an app and think they're very content with their own company and the company and support of the app. But I think this research has shown that this isn't the case. It's maybe a way that they think they'll get to these goals, these social-based goals, but they're not. And as you're saying, I don't think we should read it as people being content. We should read it as people that are looking for something more. And again, as you say, I think there is that opportunity to
make them a part of the club rather than something that just happens to be used in the club.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that stood out for me in previous research is the fact that only 37% of people said they actually made friends at their club. So as it's something that's in their social time, I think that to me has always stood out as a big miss, whether it's about apps or anything else. We've actually had a couple of questions come in as well, which is great. So firstly from Leon, do you think people are likely to leave a gym if they're getting results with an app?
Could you repeat that, sorry?
Sorry, Leon's asked, do you think people are likely to leave a gym if they are getting results with an app? So yes, if actually I'm using my app as an alternative to my gym and I'm getting results, I'm seeing more progress, is that what causes me to leave?
I guess that is difficult to answer, especially if we're using the research as a reference point. And I think I want to be careful not to cloud the research with maybe my or our assumptions. I think we've shown previously that progress, no matter how that comes, is associated with retention. So you would imagine that if you're providing an exceptional experience and they're making progress, then they would be more likely to stay with you. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess it comes back to sort of what we've mentioned before. I think it's and sort of relates to another question from Ian about apps are growing and people are getting more and more involved in that sort of technology. I think actually the challenge, if they're then seeing that as an alternative rather than a support, that's potentially where our problem is. I think it's about us looking to engage more with apps, and as you said, the study shows that people are looking for social engagement, they're looking for fun, they're not getting it potentially from their club, so they're looking for something else. So I think for me the gap is about how do we engage with that and how do we create more of a community feel and maybe involve the app in some way to do that. I think just picking up on Ian's question, said over the last 2.5 years the number of apps has increased significantly, and do we have any research that says the impact is greater than the original survey results show?
Yeah, and Ian's right there, and anyone who read our blog post, I think it was a couple of weeks ago now, will know that app use is expected to, I think, double in the next 4 years, at least in the US. So it's picking up steam, but one of the things that we wanted to reiterate, and I hoped to in the initial part, was they still haven't hit the heights that maybe people said they would. They're by no means the smartphone. They're still probably used by the minority. They're not that household item yet. They are used by a lot of people, but they're not that absolute must have, live without, like the smartphone is now. Yes,
I think it's probably worth mentioning.
Sorry, carry on.
No, so I was probably worth mentioning that the second part of the study, we pulled out some data after I believe 8 months, and then the second one was after 22 months. So it wasn't sort of right at the back of 2013 that we were originally pulling this research.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So Jen, so just a couple more from William. What are the top apps people are using, and are people using the wearable more than the phone?
Okay, so as already mentioned, for us in our research, the one that popped out was MyFitnessPal, which is obviously a web-based or mobile app, and I think the conclusion was that in our research more people were using a web or mobile app than a wearable. So maybe that commitment is less if you're downloading something for free on your phone, or maybe even paying a small amount for it on your phone, something you already have, versus the idea of a wearable. I think they get grouped together in the same category. For the sake of today's findings, they're very similar, but I think they show a slightly different level of intent maybe. But yeah, at this stage, our research shows that web apps and mobile apps are more popular for the TRP 10,000 members than wearables.
Okay, and one last one, also from William. How long are people typically using a fitness app versus using it as motivation to start?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, and that's not something that we've covered. My understanding of the research, after quite a comprehensive look at it prior to this release, is that we're not able to track at the moment how long someone's using an app for, nor how regularly. So I think as maybe over the next few years, if we decide to delve into this again, I think it is an important point to understand, is that part of every time they go to the gym, and is it something that they continue using throughout their life with the club?
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's all our questions for now. So thank you, James, and thank you for everybody for joining us today. As James said, if you do want to contact us directly, please do get in touch with James or myself. James' contact details are there. We will be sending out the recording of the webinar, and it will be available for you. All the research will be available for you, being released, coming very soon, but also on our website as well.